Faith, leaders, and a cat technicality. If Ann Myers still had a cat, she might not be able to travel much to fight the spread of COVID-19 for the CDC. Ann says, "That's why I can deploy whenever I'm needed. I no longer have a cat, therefore I no longer need to have a cat sitter." Ann is a health communications specialist for the CDC. Now, Ann always keeps a bag packed for deployments. In 2020, Ann deployed to two very different places: New Orleans and the Rosebud Sioux Reservation. But she learned a common lesson in both places. When communities and their leaders bond together to do the right things, they can help save lives. Ann went to New Orleans first. In February of 2020, Mardi Gras revelers crammed into streets and bars, turning the city and the region into a COVID-19 hotspot. Ann deployed in March with Terrence Lowe, a CDC epidemiologist, to support Louisiana's health department with their expertise. The two arrived in New Orleans to empty, silent streets. "It's usually such a lively city. When we arrived, it looked like a surreal horror movie," Ann says. There were only 5 guests in their downtown hotel, including the two of them. The receptionist told them not to bother parking, but just to leave the rental car in the main entrance drive-through. Restaurants and shops were boarded up. Food was so hard to find that the rats in the French Quarter scurried openly in the streets, desperate for rare morsels with less garbage around. Ann, who normally works in the CDC's Division for Environmental Health Science and Practice, supported Louisiana's public health officials with COVID-19 messaging. They passed guidance for the public up to the governor, who announced it in their daily briefings. Ann says, "We talked about things that we still do now, like staying 6 feet apart and wearing masks. And we were advising religious institutions about how to have worship services with Easter and Passover approaching." Back then, the guidance we were sharing was still pretty new, Ann says. Many members of the faith communities adopted new guidance measures quickly, trusting in the words of their leaders. Ann says they canceled in-person services and counseled people over the phone. They got people who knew how to video conference to teach others how to do it so they could host virtual services, Ann says. It was already tough on people seeking comfort to not worship in person, but they also couldn't gather for the holidays with large groups of loved ones. On Good Friday, which fell during Passover week last year, a Catholic and a Jewish faith leader teamed up to help ease the pain of missing in-person services. Archbishop Gregory Amond, who had recently recovered from COVID-19, and Rabbi Lexi Erdheim climbed aboard a biplane with an open cockpit and buzzed over to the Big Easy. The Archbishop sprinkled holy water from the Jordan River over the city, and the rabbi gave a blessing, Ann says. They did all these things to keep people safer. In August, Anne deployed to the Rosebud Sioux Reservation in South Dakota for a COVID-19 outbreak. On her way, she passed through towns where hardly anyone wore a mask or physically distanced. This changed at the entrance to the Rosebud Reservation. Anne says, on the reservation, signs everywhere said, masks required. Everywhere people wore them. Anne helped the tribal council with their health messaging. The Rosebud Sioux tribe faced many healthcare resource challenges, including in its hospital, making treatment for many people with severe COVID-19 illness very difficult. In many homes, multiple generations of people, including older family members, live together in a congregate setting. Some families prefer to live together under one roof so they can look after one another. During COVID-19, this made it more challenging for infected people to isolate and avoid spreading the virus to other household members. The tribal council decided that preventing COVID-19 spread had to become their priority. Anne partnered and consulted with the council to make prevention guidance culturally appropriate for the tribe, as tribal leaders were already trusted at Rosebud. Anne says, I hardly saw anyone who was not an essential worker while I was there because everyone was staying home if they didn't absolutely have to go somewhere. It was really something to see the contrast to the outside of the reservation. Not many people have expert disease knowledge, and rumors about COVID-19 had been spreading. So we partnered with leaders to provide guidance. People listen to their leaders and the people that they trust. It could be a sports figure, a priest, a rabbi, or a tribal president. You hope that people will put their faith in the right place. Anne found it particularly hard to ask that people keep their funeral gatherings small. Anne commented that many traditional and religious practices say that you have to have funerals a certain way for the person's soul, or to help loved ones move on. At that time, our guidance said not to hold funerals the way that they had been used to doing it. But COVID-19 does not respect anyone's beliefs and traditions, and Anne felt fortunate that the faith and community leaders she encountered had asked people to follow the science-based guidance. One last thing about the cats. There is actually one cat in Anne's home, but technically it's not hers. Anne told her daughter Caitlin, "This cat is your cat because I'm going to deploy. I'm ready and I'm packed."